Are you getting caught up in the latest health trends and feeling overwhelmed as to what diet is best? We get it, and that's why, as leaders of wellness in our community, Joanne's Place Health Foods has created the Wellness on Purpose podcast. On this podcast, you can expect community and brand experts to share impactful, educational, and realistic information to help you progress on your journey to live wellness on purpose now and for future generations. My name is Marissa Laughlin. I'm a holistic nutritionist in partnership with Joanne's Place and your host for this podcast. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Wellness on Purpose podcast. On today's episode, we are welcoming back Cyrus. Cyrus is a compounding pharmacist who helps get people off drugs and onto a healthy and sustainable diet and lifestyle regime that includes key nutrients from one of Canada's top leading supplement lines, which he has created, Pure Lab Vitamins. Cyrus has joined us in the past to talk about many common health concerns, but today we're going to be talking about one of the most common digestive complaints, constipation. Did you know that 1 in 4 Canadians suffer with constipation at some point in their lives? Constipation affects those who experience difficulties having a bowel movement on a regular basis. There are many factors that contribute to poor elimination, but there are also many tools that can help improve proper elimination, which is what we're going to be covering in today's episode with Cyrus. So let's get to it and welcome him back onto our podcast. Hello, Cyrus. Welcome back to the Wellness on Purpose podcast. How are you doing today?
Very good. Thank you. Thanks for having me on your show.
So today we're going to have a conversation about a topic that some people might be a little too embarrassed to talk about. I'm definitely not one of them because I think it's an incredibly important topic to talk about because 1 in 4 Canadians are suffering with this. So we're going to talk about constipation today. And I want to start by talking about why it is so important for everyone to have proper elimination for optimal health.
Yes. So I will also not be embarrassed by talking about this topic. It is too important. 25% of the Canadian population is affected in a chronic way. So we eat 3 to 4 meals a day, and our gastrointestinal tract is designed to break down proteins, fats, and sugars, and also absorb all these individual ingredients, including minerals and vitamins. But our food also contains components that do not fully break down or get digested or absorbed. And those are mostly undigestible fibers like cellulose, but also certain mineral salts that do not dissolve, like calcium phosphates, certain fats, and also cholesterol in the diet is not fully absorbed. And then we also poop out a lot of bacteria, especially old and dead bacteria from our regular gastrointestinal flora. And we need to remove all this from the system to make space for more fresh foods and nutrients to come in to keep us going day in and day out. But our bowels present also one of our major detox pathways. Our livers metabolize toxins, drugs, and food components, and many of these detox metabolites get then excreted with our bile as the transport system back into the upper portion of our bowels. And if we are chronically constipated, then this detox cannot happen properly. And the chances for reabsorption of these metabolites in the lower portions of our bowels increases. And this is called enterohepatic reabsorption. And it can lead to a toxin overload in our system.
So the bowels are so important. They have so many different jobs, and it's really important to make sure that we are detoxifying on a regular basis. So on average, how often should we be having a bowel movement per day?
Well, there is no exact number. I always use the statement of the Mayo Clinic that defines a person to be constipated if the frequency of bowel movements is fewer than 3 times a week.
Okay, so anything less than that would be considered constipated.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and if this condition persists over several weeks, this individual is then considered chronically constipated.
Okay. What would you say are some of the underlying root causes of constipation?
Well, generally, there's consensus that a low fiber content in the diet is a culprit, but also low water content of food and overall low water intake. Insufficient exercise is plays a huge role here. And as a quick rule of thumb, if a constipation happens daily, then exercise needs to happen daily too. And from my point of view, the number one cause of recurrent or chronic constipation is magnesium deficiency, and that has been studied many times over.
Okay, I think we're going to talk about magnesium a little bit further in today's episode, but I'd love to circle back to talk about constipation in relation to our gut microbiome, because you said part of the elimination process is to remove bacteria, overgrowth, dead microbiome, things that are lingering. So what impact does it have when we're constipated on our gut microbiome?
A very drastic impact. You can imagine if you're dealing with constipation on a more regular basis, that can then promote the growth of specific kinds of bacteria or fungi in your system. And if stuff is not moving through us in a regular and rhythmic way, then it also kind of lingers longer, and this leads to more fermentation of food components, and that usually goes hand in hand with gas production, because whenever you ferment something, usually those bacteria that are involved here produce carbon dioxide as a waste or byproduct, and that we then experience as gas. But one lesser known fact is that laxatives, especially when they are being used on a regular basis, that they too have a negative impact on the flora in our digestive system. And they usually, the use of laxative is always favoring bad bacteria or fungi over the flora that's supposed to be present, that we call our healthy gut flora.
Yes, and we know a healthy gut flora, it's an essential part to so many other health concerns that we're trying to combat. I think we talk about that in almost every episode. So
yeah.
Another thing we talk a lot about is stress.
Yeah.
Does stress slow down? Does it speed up our transit time? And what effect does it have on our bowels?
Well, stress is a huge factor, especially chronic stress puts us into a chronic fight or flight mode, which suppresses digestive activity for as long as the stress lasts, which means it actually slows down the peristaltic in our gastrointestinal tract.
What are your thoughts on laxatives such as Metamucil and Restorelax?
Well, Metamucil, which mostly contains psyllium husks, but also other additives like aspartame, coloring, and also maltodextrin, which is a corn-based sugar, certainly belongs to the more benign types of laxatives. But I would much rather recommend to use pure psyllium husks over a fabricated formulation like Metamucil, so that you don't consume all these non-medicinal ingredients, but instead pure psyllium husks, which can be mixed into all kinds of food carriers like applesauce, smoothies, any kind of dairy products, to just kind of bulk up and bind water in your system. Restorelax, also known as polyethylene glycol or PEG, is also kind of belongs to the more benign group of laxatives, and usually is pure. It does not contain any other funky non-medicinals, but is most certainly an additive to what should work on its own. What I would like to express here to stay 100% clear of is the so-called senna extracts or Senecot, and also a synthetic molecule known as Dulcolax. It's called bisacodyl. And these are very drastic laxatives, and they will give you fairly quick results. It's also often quite uncomfortable to use these meds, because they're kind of pushing against a dry plug of constipation from above. Can be very uncomfortable, but they most certainly cause a vicious cycle and will over time lead you deeper into chronic constipation because of the loss of water and minerals that they induce.
And it's so crazy to think that these products are recommended so commonly in like Shoppers Drug Mart or you're seeing your doctor. These are products people are relying on so frequently, and it's not necessarily helping. As you said, it becomes this vicious cycle of just trying to get through the week or have one regular bowel movement. But there are definitely better alternatives to a laxative on the market to support proper elimination. What are those, and what are your recommendations for dosages?
Well, I mean, if one of the most common causes of constipation is magnesium deficiency, then we have to put some focus on replenishing the whole body with a high quality and well-absorbed kind of magnesium. Magnesium glycinate is, from my point of view, the supplement to use here. It's well absorbed, so it replenishes the gut muscle from the blood side. And this will then allow peristaltic to re-engage. Peristalsis is this rhythmic bowel contraction that is meant to move our food forward and through the gastrointestinal tract. Magnesium would also help to keep the stool to some extent more moist so that it doesn't get dry and plugged up. And it actually can also be used to help people wean off any pre-existing regular laxative regime. You can imagine if you were over time, if you've gotten used to regular use of Senecot or Docusate or any other combination of laxative regime, and then you would like to kind of go the natural route, you can't just stop one thing and start the other. You will experience quite significant constipation this way, but by bringing in the magnesium glycinate and then slowly weaning off the over-the-counter laxatives one by one in smaller increments, you actually have a chance to kind of make this transition phase a lot more comfortable. You also have to keep in mind if your gastrointestinal tract has been stuck and lethargic for some time and to the point where the colon is potentially already a bit more like distended and widened and became much more larger because of the constipation within. It actually takes time. And most certainly dietary and also lifestyle changes like exercise, more hydration, and the replenishment of magnesium to slowly kind of turn this thing around and become regular and happier in this process of moving away from a regular use of laxatives and into more natural approaches like diet, lifestyle, and magnesium replenishment.
Absolutely. And I think on every episode, we've talked about how amazing magnesium glycinate is, helps with stress, helps with sleep, helps with relaxing. So this is just another bonus that magnesium can help with promoting regular and consistent bowel movements for our Canadians. Now, Pure Lab Vitamins has a free webinar coming up, and you're going to be talking more in depth about constipation and gut health. So can you tell our listeners a little bit more about that, how they can register and where to register?
Yeah. This webinar runs on June 29th at 6:30 p.m. It's an online webinar. I will go into great detail on the potential causes, the dietary changes, lifestyle changes, and also explain the variety of laxatives out there and how they impact digestion, also on how stress impacts digestion, and then how to kind of incorporate the proper changes and key nutrients to actually fix the problem of constipation. You can register for this webinar on our website at www.purelabvitamins.com. There's a big registration area there. You can also just kind of sign up for our email newsletter at the bottom of our main page. And I'm sure Joanne's Place here in Peterborough will also send out notifications and have the registration link available. And then maybe at this point, I can also mention that all our past webinars are available on our website. It's in the webinar tab, and that's where we show links to the recordings of older webinars that we have held. And many of these are condition focused and might be of interest to you. So please have a look there.
Wonderful. I will leave the registration link for the webinar in the featured post on our Joanne's Place website. I'll also leave it in the description below, and we will put it through on social media as well for everyone listening to go and register there. Thanks again so much for joining us today, Cyrus. I look forward to chatting with you again.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
If you guys are still here, thank you so much for checking out today's episode. You know what to do now. Be sure to subscribe to our channels so you're notified as soon as a new episode is released. And also find us on social media and share that you are listening to the Wellness on Purpose podcast.